Okay, now we're just going to really have a chat because I don't think you can summarise people's experiences in singular questions. So maybe we should just kind of take it in turns. I feel like a primary school teacher, sorry. And just maybe share about how periods have been involved, in your journey as an athlete, whether that be training or competing or neither. I feel like everyone has really different scenarios. Michelle, do you want to start first?
Sure. So I do a sport that, as you saw, involves white pajamas, which in itself is reasonably frightening as a young person. I've been doing karate my whole life pretty much, started when I was 8. So yeah, I guess, as I sort of said in the video, I think I was the first person to be interviewed and I was like, oh my goodness, that question just, because I am kind of someone that just gets on with life, but it has always been there, and it's been something that, because I'm almost retired now, the conversation has really changed. So it's been something that when I was a 13-year-old athlete, when I first got my period, there was literally no one to talk to. And then as the female athlete on the team, the token female, because I'm also in a male-dominated sport, wearing white pajamas, the only person probably on the team getting their period. But whenever girls came on, it was like, oh, that's a Michelle thing. Go talk to her. I can't talk about it. But that has definitely changed over the last few years, which is probably the last decade. It's good to see.
Yeah, nice. Izzi?
Yeah, so as a runner, I think it's interesting. It's always been kind of talked about previously, like, you lose your period, that's normal. I mean, you're fit, you're running 150 Ks a week, you're really lean. It's almost been like a badge of honor. And it's great to see that changing in the last few years. So I'm 26 and admittedly, I've only had a regular cycle for the last 18 months. And I'm really proud of that because having a menstrual cycle for me now shows that I'm healthy. It means I can go after my goals and know that my body is actually responding to the training, adapting and able to get better and be, the best athlete I can be. But as a junior athlete, there was just no resources, no education, and really just not talked about. And it was kind of almost stigmatized to even really talk about. And I almost felt, to be honest, embarrassed when I did have a period because it felt like maybe I shouldn't be getting this because it means I'm not fit enough. So it's quite interesting to see the conversation change in the last few years. I guess looking at menstruation now is a really healthy sign of my body working with me and not working against me.
Annette, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'm similar to Izzi in that, when I came through, so I started cycling at the age of 12. I was a track sprinter, so I was a bit bigger. And then at the Junior Worlds, I think I was like 15 or 16. I was like, I thought I wanted to get it in control. So I spoke to the doctor and said, hey, this is what's happening. I'm a female. What should I do about it? And his instant response was, here's the range of pills. Choose which one you want to go on. And that was simply it. And it was like, okay, so I went on to one of the pills and within a month I'd put on all this weight and I couldn't explain why. He didn't explain that part either. And then it did come off. And so then I was like, all right, okay. And then I started to get into a rhythm. And then what was interesting was I didn't kind of revisit that ever. In 2014, I thought, oh, maybe I want to have a break from this. So I came off by my choice. But I was in Italy with my boyfriend and every time I was late, I was nervous, and same with Izzi. I actually didn't get it quite often. So then it was like, was this stress worth it? And so I spoke to a different doctor and he said, my wife has been on the pill for ages and she's fine, so go back on it. And she's a 60, 70-year-old female who probably doesn't play sport. And so I was like, okay, sure. So I went back on it and then we didn't look into it until 2019. So I've been, to 3 Olympic Games. I've been at the top of my game for 10 years and it's only 2019 that we actually started talking about it. And it was through our nutritionist, Jill Leckie at the Australian cycling team. She was amazing. And so she worked with Stacey Sims and it was all about just having that conversation. And so we all sat there, there was about 8 of us and I think maybe 2 of us weren't on it, on some sort of pill. And at the end of the day, when you think about it, the pill is literally putting estrogen in your body, which is not beneficial for performance. So it was quite an interesting revelation. So from then on, we all looked into it and we found out that different things are suited to different people and people react differently. And maybe if you do have a strong period or you do, it is inconsistent, maybe there is a better option for you and maybe that is the pill. So I'm not saying it's all negative, but I think it was just more about being aware and knowing exactly what you're doing and yeah, since then I've been tracking my period and I've learned so much more, and I wish I knew all this stuff earlier, but thanks to you guys and people like this, I think we're going to see a lot of changes in women in Australia.
Amber.
Well, that makes me really sad because you guys are all from the era after me. I was a rower in like the noughties. I went to the 2004 and 2008 Olympics, and I thought things would get better after I left. But I just look back on it and I'm really glad that I had a mum who was really straight up and down about it and just said, Amber, if you're going to be doing active things, just bloody learn how to deal with tampons. And so that put me in good stead for the first part of my rowing career. Then I was a lightweight rower, and of course it went away, but then it only came back at really, really inconvenient moments. So, and quite randomly, quite unbelievably, and I wish that I was an athlete 10 years down the track, because I understand now there's apps and all sorts of things that you can do to track your performance with your cycle, and you know those graphs that we saw earlier, you can time your competition to be at the peak and all of that. So I'm not going to be much help because my athletic story didn't involve getting a period very much, but it does. I think it's a major barrier to women in sport, and that's something I'm passionate about.
When we talk about it as a barrier, I guess through the video and through chatting with you guys like 5 minutes before we got on stage, the experience of bleeding and competing is really different. And maybe it would be great to give us all an insight onto, I guess, the mentality or the maybe hurdles or victories that you have either been able to achieve or have to kind of address when you're competing. Izzi, do you want to maybe start with your experience?
Yeah, sure. So I guess I'll just add, love what you all said about that. But yeah, I also choose not to be on the pill or anything like that, just so I know that I'm getting a menstrual cycle, and I really want to be in control of that and be able to feel, how my body is, because I think, as an athlete, we're so in tune with what we're doing. You really need to know how you're feeling every day. If you're on the brink of injury and sickness pretty much every day when you're training as hard as we do, I really want to have that information. But to be honest, I'm still confused. I track my cycle. I have an Oura ring which tells my temperature at night, and I can kind of see the graphs going up and down. But like you said, everyone I've spoken to about my period just says, go on the pill, get an IUD, and it's just, to me, that's not actually addressing it. It's just kind of like almost masking it and just not dealing with, like, actually knowing more about it and working with it. So I think we're doing a great job. We've got a long way to go, and there's heaps more research which we need to really understand how women are functioning, definitely. But yeah, for me, unfortunately, I really struggled, to be honest. When I was contacted about this event to be a speaker, I just come off a race, and I'd had a really bad race because I was in my luteal phase, and I was feeling really achy and crampy and not recovered and irritable, and I ran probably like a minute slower than I should have over 10K, which, was not a good result for me. So I'm still trying to figure out how to run well on my cycle, but it's a trade-off, I guess, for me about having a cycle and being healthy. But I can definitely feel, for me, I've got about a 40-day cycle after tracking on the apps, and I can see that in that week leading into a period, I'm really struggling. And if I've got a really important race that week, there's just not much I can do about it, but rally for it and try and get it done regardless. But it does make it a lot harder. And then suddenly, the next week you flip the switch and it's like, oh, I'm Superwoman, I can do anything. So when I look at my race calendar and kind of look at what my menstrual cycle might be, it's just kind of like luck of the draw, and I guess at best just trying to work with my menstrual cycle. But yeah, I'm crying out for more research, more information, and more conversations like this, because I'm still struggling. And last year was my first Olympics, and I remember my whole kind of teenage life thinking, oh my God, what if I get to the Olympics and I get my period that day? That would suck. And as it turned out, it wasn't the Olympics, but it was the week I had to qualify. I was due for my period. I had just flown overseas. It was, middle of COVID last year. I was in the Netherlands and I was due for my period, and I was just not feeling good, but I had to run a qualifying time in that race. And I remember taking a Panadol half an hour before the race and just thinking, please help me. And I managed to get the job done and I did qualify, but it was just kind of that, kind of full circle of thinking back to, being a younger athlete and thinking, oh my God, what if that'd be the worst? And it kind of was like the situation, you just have to deal with it. But I definitely am still learning a lot.
Congrats. Gosh. Annette.
What's also interesting is that everyone's, like I said before, everyone's affected in different ways. So there, on one hand, you're meant to be technically strongest during your period, but then on the other hand, if you get pain, it could be the opposite. So it's such a fine balance. And I had the same thing with the Olympics. I was just like praying that it would be like a few days in, but like enough that it is gone, but I'm still getting the benefits. But you can't. Life is just so unpredictable. So I'll just say one experience I had recently. I got hit so hard and I could hardly pedal. I had pain all the way down my legs and I couldn't get home. And so it's just like, if that was race day, what do you do? So it's more about just learning. And one other experience that popped into my mind, it's not very flowy here, but so as part of the team pursuit team, so that was actually with my teammate Maeve. There's 5 or 6 girls and there's 5 or 6 guys who are doing the same thing, and we were all doing a very similar program. But then they pulled us all up into a meeting, and then they showed how many days each squad was off sick. And the females, even though we wanted it just as badly, we're all here committing to the same thing. Everyone's relocated to Adelaide to focus on training. We had so many more sick days. It was significant. It was about 20% more or something like that, like huge. And then I started looking into it because I was like, well, because they said, is this an epidemic? And I felt like they were kind of targeting us mentally. And I was like, hang on a sec. Like, we're not here to muck around, right? We're here to win Olympic gold, just the same as those boys. So I started looking into it myself, and then I worked out that I think it was 80% of the occurrences of people getting sick that year had been in the week before their period. And so this was before we'd started looking into it. And so then I look on these apps now, and then it says some of the apps are really good, and they say, oh, this is what you can experience. It's like higher tendency to get sick, higher tendency to get injured. This is the foods you need to eat in preparation, or like to boost your immune system. And so it's a thing. So I was like, well, why is an athlete finding this out on their own? Like, we need more people talking. So
Woo, so good.
And since my sporting career, I have become a doctor in psychology, and I have looked into this area, and it's like, why don't we talk about this more? It's pretty easy to put in some strategies. The week before your period, you just warm up a little bit more before your session. The week of your period, you get if girls go home because they're not feeling so great, and then the week of your ovulation, get as many performances as you can in there. It's not the be all and the end all, and because I'm a doctor of psychology, I will say be careful about the placebo effect as well, you girls, because you can talk yourself in or out of almost anything. But even so, there are still really reasonable strategies that coaches, who are mostly male, unfortunately, can still take around a female athlete's period.
Do you have anything to add, Michelle?
Oh, the only thing I was going to add is just picking up on Izzi's point about choice. And, I'm over 40 now, still competing, a little bit crazy, very soon to be retired. But when I first moved into a senior division, which was all about weight categories, and I'm nearly 6 foot and used to fight under 60 kilos, which is very stupid. I'm a dietitian by trade, very silly. But the conversation that I had with a coach at a very important event, which was qualifying for a World Cup, and I happened to get my period and I was 3 kilos heavier than what I normally would be. He was like, well, you should be on the pill. And I was like, but I don't want to be on the pill. Like, I understand that that's a way of managing it, but I think also having the ability to have the choice is really important. And I, probably similar to Izzi, went through a long period where I didn't have a cycle, to the point that when I fell pregnant, I wasn't really sure if I was pregnant, or, the doctor said to me, oh, how long's it been? I was like, it's been a very long time. Like, I've stopped competing, but I actually don't know where I am. turned out I had twins. That was also very exciting. But anyway, another very good reason to, be able to track those things. But I think the choice is the part that, as Amber said, coaches are still predominantly male, and it will take some time for that to change as all of us transfer into coaching roles. But the choice is really important, I think.
Great. Such good insight. Apart from conversation and research, what else needs to be put into place to make sure that our athletes are looked after and their cycles are just not something that's brushed aside and something discussed? Any practical or specific, conversations, people?
Well, I think it's just, education, especially in coaches. I am also coaching at the moment recreation runners or semi-elite runners, and I love to have conversations with my female athletes. They tell me how they're feeling, and I find out where they're at, and I'm like, yeah, that's normal, don't worry, that was me last week. But as we said, a lot of coaches are male, and it's not that anything wrong with men, but they just need to be educated more. I've had only one female coach in my career, and a number of male coaches. I spent 5 years in America on scholarship in the college system there, and I was repeatedly told to lose 15 pounds, and I'd run 30 seconds faster, and if I lost that weight, I would be completely unhealthy, and at that stage I was already not getting a period. So just the fact that those people in those paid, very well paid roles, having the authority to tell young women what to do with their bodies, they just need to be educated. And I think it's just education, especially in those coaching roles, in clubs and teams, in organisations, because they're shaping the lives of young women.
I don't really have a lot to add, but I do like the idea of putting things up on the back of bathrooms, going to schools, doing the same thing. Just because if you'd told me, I had two brothers growing up, and my mum tried to talk to me about periods, and I'd just be a little bit just keep going, but pretend that I wasn't interested. So it's just get it out there, just tell everybody, tell these youngsters coming through, because they do want to know, and they will want to know.
Do we have? Oh, do you want to? Yeah. Only thing, the grant that's available now, utilise that as your opportunity. I think for resources and for particular, grassroots clubs. I come from a sport with no funding, no paid people. Use the grant opportunities to equip your clubs or your sporting organisations. We stock first aid kits, and not that this is a medical condition, but we should have these sorts of products around for your athletes. It might stop the embarrassed, 60-year-old coach from having to have the conversation, but at least if your athletes know that the products are available, and if it happens at a time that someone hasn't planned for it, it's a small thing that I think can make a big difference.
Definitely. I remember in America in college, and the bathrooms there, it was $2 to get a tampon. It's well, I don't have a $2 coin on me when I'm getting my period, before a session. So having those resources available is just, an incredible thing.